Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sessions Cafe, brought to you by Entrigue magazine. I'm your host, Keri Singleton, and today we bring you the show all the way from suburban Philadelphia, where we're going to sit down with Mike Africa Jr., author, motivational speaker, and really good friend. Check it out. So here we are in suburban Philadelphia. We're going to talk to Mike Africa Jr. about a lot of things, specifically his book. His new book is called On the Move, and it's the story of a brother that was born on September 15, 1978 in a Philadelphia jail. His story is one for the books, no pun intended. We're going to check this conversation out right now that I had with Mike. See what he has to say about what it's like to be an author.
How do you feel about that? You're an author now. You're a bona fide author. How does that feel for you?
I'm really proud of, the success of being able to write a book. I hear that like 5% of people that start writing a book are the ones that finish.
Yeah.
So I'm one of 5%.
True.
That's it's kind of hard to believe.
Yeah.
But I don't know why that is. I guess it's the process. But I feel accomplished. I feel good about it. I have a really great team, my editors and my writer and my literary agent, helping to put all the things together and doing it in a way that made it a lot easier for me than it probably is for the other 5%. But yeah, I'm happy about it. I'm excited about it, and I can't wait to see where it goes. Because already like producers and film producer makers, they want to get involved, and there are some big name Oscar-winning film producers that want to that have read it and maybe want to turn it into a movie.
That's dope.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about the journey right now.
On August 8, 1978, the Philadelphia Police Department, under the direction of Mayor Frank Rizzo, waged their first confrontation against the MOVE organization at their Powelton Village headquarters. So I asked Mike, who was born in 1978, some 8 years after the MOVE organization officially formed in West Philadelphia, what it was like growing up in the organization after his parents, Mike Sr. and Debbie Africa, were incarcerated for the 1978 confrontation with the Philadelphia Police Department and the MOVE organization, which left one police officer dead.
We are under fire. Next to the car.
I asked him what was it like being orphaned and growing up in those early years in the seed of wisdom.
So MOVE is a revolutionary organization.
Right.
Founded by John Africa. He started the organization with the mission to protect life, people, animals, and the environment. And, MOVE had a lot of run-ins, like the Black Panther Party, like, Malcolm X, like other freedom fighters of the U.S. in the U.S. American system.
Right.
MOVE ran into challenges with the police and law enforcement and officials. And to get away from some of the confrontational atmosphere in Philadelphia, MOVE sent the children to live in what was the sister chapter of MOVE called the Seed of Wisdom, and that was located in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
Years that I can remember, I remember being in Virginia in the Seed of Wisdom, a lot of tumultuous, people have to read the book to really get the full understanding of what that was like. But for me, it was like peaceful, quiet.
Yeah.
But for the adults that was taking care of us, the children, the MOVE children, it wasn't always that way.
Right.
For me, I was one of the younger of the children. There were
Right.
15 MOVE children that were in Virginia, and it was
Okay.
2 adults, sometimes 3. But generally, I was following behind whatever the other older kids were doing. So for me, I didn't really experience the mental anguish that they were going through.
Yeah.
But it was sort of peaceful until the end when we were kind of leaving Virginia because we left in a very hostile way.
Right.
Police and raids on the house and put in an orphanage.
Wow.
So it was just kind of uncomfortable there. But the year was around in the early 80s.
Right.
So I think at that time we went from Virginia to the tumultuous exit to my grandmother's house where things were a lot more peaceful.
So when you returned to Philadelphia, you were living with your grandmother on Reno Street in West Philadelphia. There were other MOVE houses in West Philadelphia, notably one on Osage Avenue. What was your relationship with the kids on Osage Avenue who would inevitably die on May 13th, 1985? What was your relationship with those kids in the Osage who lived at the Osage house? And did you go to that house and to the other move houses while you were living with your grandmother?
When we were living in Virginia, all of the kids that were at the Osage house they were in Virginia. We were all together.
Okay.
When we all came to Philadelphia, I went to Reno Street and they went to Osage Avenue.
Oh, wow.
May 13th, 1985, the Philadelphia Police Department again attacked MOVE, this time at their Cobbs Creek, West Philadelphia location. And this time, the city's first black mayor, Wilson Goode, was behind the attack.
We intend to evict from the house, we intend to evacuate from the house, and we intend to seize control of the house. We will do it by any means necessary.
13 MOVE members were in the house on Osage Avenue when a bomb was dropped, killing 11 of those MOVE members, including 5 children. Mike Africa, who was living a couple of miles away at his grandmother's house on Reno Street, was only 6 years old.
I remember that day being dark. It didn't start out dark. It started out bright and sunny like any other May day. And I was on my way out the door to play with some friends. It was 5-something in the evening.
How old were you?
I was 6 years old.
Wow.
I was on my way out the door, and as I was walking down the street, one of my friends was walking up the street, and he said they dropped a bomb on MOVE. And my first reaction was, that's impossible.
Right.
Who drops a bomb? We in the house watching Rambo. We know what bombs look like. Nobody dropping no bombs. That was my first reaction. That's something that happens in a movie.
Right.
You know? And he said, look. And he pointed to the sky. He pointed with his head. He just nodded like. I turned around and looked, and the whole sky was black.
Wow. I can see on your face, man, as I'm sitting right across from you, that pain from all those years ago is still there. Because those were your brothers and sisters.
Yeah, it never goes away. And you know, as much as you do these interviews, sometimes you might think it might get a little easier to talk about certain things, but it never goes away.
Never goes away.
Never goes away. And you see it the same way you saw it then. I can see it as vividly as I saw it when it happened. When I saw it in 1985, it's the same.
And you're still emotionally that 6-year-old kid when you think about that.
Yeah.
By 1992, 7 years or so after the MOVE bombing at Osage Avenue, Mike Africa Jr. was now 13 years old. By his own admission, he was a bit of a troubled kid growing up in what was called the Bottom. So Ramona Africa comes to Mike Africa Jr.'s rescue on May 14th, 1992. At 13 years old, life on Reno Street with his grandmother was becoming a problem. The rambunctious young teenager wanted to get back to MOVE principles. Let's talk to him about that.
Reuniting with Ramona and MOVE was, I think it was the best thing that could have happened at that time for me.
And how did that happen?
It happened. Okay, so the way it happened was my grandmother. See, I was one of those like kind of rebellious kind of kids. And MOVE, we were always taught like if you don't believe in something, you don't accept things that you don't think is right.
Okay.
So, you know, my grandmother would tell me things to do. I mean, I didn't turn that belief off when it came to her.
Right.
So she told me stay on the block, and I felt like I wanted to leave the block. You know, I got cousins that are younger than me to leave in the block.
Right.
I got friends that are my age that are catching a bus to New York. As long as you get home by the time the street light comes on, you can go wherever you want.
Right.
So they were traveling around the city, and they didn't have any restrictions on them that way. And I'm older than them, and my cousins too.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna leave the block. Grandma said don't leave the block.
Right.
When I get home, Grandma whooped my ass.
Grandma did not play.
Grandma ain't play.
Mhm.
So, she kept telling me, this is dangerous. You can't do this. This is crack era West Philly.
Yes, 80s.
It's not like the West Philadelphia Will Smith came from.
Correct.
This is a different part of West Philly, the bottom, where ain't nobody had no parents.
Right. It was called the bottom for a reason.
It's actually called the Black Bottom.
Oh, oh God.
It's shortened to the bottom.
Shortened it, yeah.
But the Black Bottom is,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So Grandma was, just very nervous about things.
Yeah.
So, I was a young teenager, and I just didn't want to listen to what she had to say about that.
Right.
So one day I came home, and she whooped my ass. She wasn't the kind of grandma that would she would spank you.
Right.
But she would also use a belt.
Okay.
And this day, she used her fist.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Grandma really wasn't playing.
She wasn't playing.
Yes.
And I didn't hit her back.
I would hope not.
But I grabbed her arms. And she snatched them away and said, "You want to fight?"
Yeah.
"Oh, you want to fight?" And then she really tore me up.
Mm. And how old were you?
I was probably 13.
Okay. So that's an interesting age for any teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know she felt bad about it too. It's like one of those ass whoopings, like this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I was hurt though.
Right.
I was crying. I was bleeding. She bust my lip. And I don't think she meant to do that either. I think she was mostly body shots, but I'm trying to move, and I think I inadvertently I got hit in the lip.
Yeah.
So my lip is busted. I could taste the blood. And my mother, just as we were sitting down and kind of collecting ourselves, my mother called from prison.
Wow.
And my grandmother was like, she was exhausted, and I could see that she was having like a nervous breakdown type of experience.
Wow.
And she was rubbing her head, she was sweating. And then she said, "Debbie, this boy is getting too old, but he's so disobedient." She said, "I can't keep," and I'm not going to be able to keep beating him like this. And he's not going to listen anyway. She said he needs some principle. And in our language, principle meant move belief, move law, move upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
So, the three of us were sitting there, my grandmother and I were sitting there, and my mom was on the phone, and we're all like just talking.
Right.
And she said, "You need some principle." And she was asking me questions. Did I want to do certain things? And I was saying, "Do you want to go to camp? Do you want to go to," there was all of these things that was coming out that she was asking me that I want to do. And as we're talking, the news comes on, and Ramona is on the news.
Wow.
And it said, survivor of the MOVE bombing is set to be released from prison on May 13th, 1992.
Wow.
And then they started talking about the bombing and what happened.
Right.
And I said, I want to go see Mona. And I asked Grandma, "Can I go see Mona?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "But ask your mother." So my mom, I get the phone from from my grandmother talking to my mom. And I told Mom, I said, "Mom, when Mona come home," I said, "Can you ask Ramona to come pick me up and take me with her when she come home?" And she said yes. And I said, "Do you think she'll do it?" And she said, "Yeah, I think if I ask her to do it, if she says yes, she will do it."
Yeah.
So I said, "All right." So there was weeks of anticipation.
Right.
And I'm seeing Ramona on the news. I'm seeing her on scheduled to be on these different shows, these different talk shows, Geraldo Rivera, and it was all these different shows on at the time.
Right.
And she was scheduled to be on like most of them. And she came home in a limousine, and I remember thinking, she's not going to have time for me.
Because you probably thought that she had to do this press run, and she was just really too busy to be
worrying about a 13-year-old kid trying to get some principle.
Right.
But true to her word, on May 14th, 1992, the day after she got out of prison, she came and got me.
Wow.
And she took me back with her, and I stayed with her that day, and then I went back home that night, but I couldn't get that experience out of my mind.
Right.
We had not been in Move or around Move members for a while after the bombing,
right? Yeah.
for years, like almost like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
So I remembered the smell of Move,
Mm-hmm.
the raw food smell.
Mm-hmm.
I remembered the language Move people used. I remembered the hair. By then my hair was cut. I was in school. Move kids didn't go to school. I was in school now.
Right.
So it was like all of this like nostalgic experiences that I'm having, and I just couldn't wait to go back. I was reunited with Ramona when I was 13 years old.
Okay.
And it was 1992, and immediately I just kind of dug into the Move lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, quickly. We gelled really quick. I mean, it was almost seamless.
Okay.
Almost seamless. Not quite seamless, but it was almost seamless.
Okay. How did you adjust to the Move lifestyle in terms of the diet and the exercise?
That's why I say almost seamless.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the other kids had been eating all raw food or mostly raw food throughout their lives, so they were really strong.
Right.
And when I wasn't with them, when I was living with my grandmother, we didn't eat all raw food.
Mm-hmm.
We ate some raw food, and she always encouraged us to eat real food.
Okay.
Not poison.
Right. Yeah. Fresh food.
Not poison.
Right.
Like,
well, yeah.
Candy, like anything. If a food product has monosodium glutamate or GMOs or red 40 and blue 5 and all of that, she was strongly against it. I remember being in the car with her, and somebody opened something, and she could smell the chemicals in it.
Wow.
She would take it from you and throw it out the window.
Wow.
And say, "Don't eat that. It's nothing but chemicals." And,
I feel bad. I just had a bag of candy.
She probably would have threw that out the window.
Sure, she would have.
So the other kids, because they were they were strong, they kept up on their regimens.
Yeah.
And I didn't. So there was adjusting. It took some adjusting.
Okay.
Because I mean, the type of exercises they did was different than.
Calisthenics, right?
Yeah, but it was different level.
Wow.
What I mean is, it was extreme.
Yeah.
I don't know how many sit-ups Mike Tyson was doing when he was training for fights, but I bet they did more. I don't know how
He's
many.
a kid.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how many push-ups he could do, but they were doing 100 straight.
Wow.
It was different level. The young kids. I mean, I'm talking about the other 13 and 14-year-olds. They were doing 60 and 70 push-ups straight.
Wow.
So to catch up to that, to compete with that, I couldn't do.
So how did you get to the point where you could keep up? I
had to work my ass off.
Yeah. Okay.
But I was so embarrassed by my inability to do things that required strength. I would like do it in secret.
Okay.
So I would like hide behind doors. I would hide behind walls. I would kind of secretly train. Like I would exercise by myself, because if they were doing 60 and 70 push-ups at a WAP, and I'm doing 8 and 6 and 4,
right?
It just was so embarrassing.
But eventually, you obviously, built your strength up.
Eventually, I got to the point where I could do 100 push-ups straight.
Yeah.
My max is 137.
Wow.
Straight. And my longest distance in a run is 22 miles. So yeah, I got there. I got there. I passed some of them.
Mike has one very important criteria in his search for a wife, and he will not be swayed. Check this out.
I was so dedicated to Move life that I wanted the purity of Move as much as I could.
Wow.
So, while I dated non-Move women, the woman that I wanted to marry, I wanted to either become a Move woman or I wanted her to be a Move woman. So that was my thinking, and I would have settled for nothing less than that.
Wow. And so, what happened? How did you find her?
Yeah. So So there was a MOVE member. There is a MOVE member by the name of Mo Africa.
Okay.
Mo was on trial with John Africa in 1981, bomb making, frame up, all of this kind of stuff, and they both were acquitted of every single charge.
Right.
But Mo was one of the men that he kind of took me under his wing, and he took me to work. I was a 13-year-old kid. He took me to work with him. He has a bunch of kids, and I lived with him with his family when I left my grandmother, and he just kind of took me under his wing. He groomed me. He taught me how to do all of these home improvement work, and then when we got a little bit older, he has a daughter that she's a little bit younger than I am. We grew up kind of together from there.
Okay. And
eventually, he was one of the people that encouraged me to start talking to her. I was displaying an interest in MOVE life.
Right. Okay.
And him being a MOVE member.
Right.
He appreciated that.
Right.
So when other people encouraged me to really talk to her, he did too.
Yeah. Wow. And so 27 and a half years later, his daughter and I are still together. That's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. That is beautiful. And you have four kids. Beautiful children. 26, 23, 20, and 13. Wow. And the 13-year-old is the only girl. So you found your MOVE queen. I did. And we're still building our kingdom. Yeah. Yeah. So I have a lot of good examples around me. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people have different ideas about what they think MOVE is, but MOVE is MOVE is an organization, a group of a lot of different families. Right. And my parents were together since 1969. They had a little off and on when they were young teenagers for a minute, but steadily together since 1974, even throughout prison. Wow. And then Janine and Phil were together since however long in the 70s, and right. And Mo and Mary were together since 1973. So I have really good examples around me to show me, this thing about commitment and loyalty.
Now a family man, Mike Africa Jr. had one focus, and that was to get his parents and the other members of the MOVE organization that were incarcerated since 1978 out of prison.
The MOVE 9.
Yeah, so that was a journey. The MOVE 9 had been in prison since 1978.
That's before you were born.
Before I was born.
Yeah.
5 weeks before I was born.
Right.
I was born in the jail cell. 5 weeks later.
Wow.
After the initial attack. And yeah, I wasn't supposed to be the person that get the people out of prison. I mean, what kind of if you made this a Hollywood film, this kid is born in the jail cell.
Right.
The baby is the one that goes and gets the people out of jail.
Yeah,
they're throwing that script in the trash. Yeah. That's unrealistic.
That makes good Hollywood though, brother.
That's what happened.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a true story, and I got documented proof to prove it.
Throughout his 20s and 30s, Mike Africa Jr. spent most of his energy focused on freeing his parents and the other members of the MOVE organization that had been incarcerated since the 1978 confrontation. MOVE 9 members such as his parents, Debbie and Mike Sr., and Janine, Janet, Eddie, Delbert, and Chuck Africa were still languishing in state prisons across the state of Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, by this point, Merle and Phil Africa died in prison. Fortunately, in June of 2018, Freedom Day came for Debbie Africa. As Miss Debbie was freed from Pennsylvania State Prison, it was a joyous occasion. Let's talk about what that was like for Mike bringing his mom home.
I was under no illusion about her not making it. She wouldn't have been, if she had passed away in prison, she wouldn't have been the first MOVE member to die in prison.
That's right.
So I wasn't thinking like, she'll get out one day. It'll happen. My thing was urgent. It was urgency, and what brought that urgency on was I started believing that the elder MOVE members were intentionally keeping them in prison.
That the MOVE members that were not incarcerated.
Yeah, I started believing they were intentionally keeping them in prison.
Wow.
Yeah. So it became very urgent at that point because they were so nonchalant about their approach to getting them out. They didn't want to hire lawyers for them. They were just, anytime it seemed like there might be any movement, they were discouraging. So I just said, you know what, I got to do this. I kind of did it in secret. Getting my mom home, picking her up in the car, like I didn't believe that she was actually going to be released, even though the officials told me she was.
Right. Wow.
Parole agent came to the house and scoped out the house, make sure we didn't have any guns or weapons in the house. You know, they did their due diligence to check and see, and I still didn't really fully believe it.
Right.
And I would say to my mom, I would say to my dad when he would call me, I would say, I don't believe it until she's in my car.
And your dad was still incarcerated himself. Yeah. So once I actually picked her up from the jail and put her in my car, walked her to the car, and we started taking pictures in the car. That's when it was real. We started calling her family and making sure that they knew. Her family was not always happy, not all the way happy that like I went and picked her up without them knowing about it too. Okay.
They were upset about that because they felt like they should have been there with her.
And what was the reason behind that? Why was it not a family affair? Was it because of the press?
It had to be secret.
Okay.
Because I didn't want people interfering with her coming home.
Okay. Oh,
and
I see.
They may not have understood that, but there's nothing I could do about that.
Right.
You know, I couldn't have anything interfering with me bringing her home.
That's right.
So everybody wasn't happy about it, but the fact that, you know, I had to do it the way I had to do it, though.
2018, Miss Debbie, a.k.a. Debbie Africa, Mike's mom, was finally freed from prison. She was the first of the Move 9 to be freed from prison, and let's just say that adjusting to life on the streets after 40 years incarcerated wasn't easy for Miss Debbie.
So she comes home, and after 40 years, the world has changed extensively.
Totally
Cell
changed.
phones and Wi-Fi.
My mom told me. She told me that her favorite plant are red roses. So in the front of my house, I planted, the whole front was filled with red roses, and when she came home, they were in peak bloom.
Wow.
So the whole front was filled with red roses. She came to the house. There was 100 people in the house welcoming her home, hugging her, crying, kissing her face. And the world was definitely different.
Thank you so much for watching the show, and we'll see you guys next week with more Mike Africa Jr.